The sun is forever.
Saros runs at 60 FPS on both PS5 and PS5 Pro. After extensive testing, base PS5 held that target 88.6% of the time, PS5 Pro held it 93.4%. But frame rate is only half the story. Let's start at the beginning. Arjun Devraj, voiced by Rahul Kohli, wakes up on a planet Carcosa. The wake up cutscene runs at 30 frames per second on both consoles by design. Almost 40 seconds in, control returns and we are at 60 FPS. PS5 on the left side, PS5 Pro on the right side. Same character, same capture chain. The differences you're about to see are entirely about how each console renders the same scene. What's up everyone? Couple of weeks ago I tested the new PSSR upscaler on Crimson Desert. Today, same upscaler, much harder test, Saros Digital Edition launched April 28th as a PS5 exclusive. They've also released day one 12GB patch with no official patch notes. I tested identical content on both PS5 and PS5 Pro, same scenes, same capture chain, every frame analyzed. Let's see how the new PSSR holds up against Saros particle effects. Running toward the gate, three things to notice. First, the PS5 Pro side is sharper. Housemarque renders at roughly 1440p internal on PS5 Pro, around 1224 on base PS5. Second, PS5 Pro image looks slightly more vibrant. That's not your eyes. Housemarque's technical director Seppo Helonen confirmed they made, quote, many small adjustments in reflections and overall quality on PS5 Pro beyond just resolution. Post-processing intensity is part of that. Third, the particles. The dust and embers, the volumetric haze, they read more clearly on PS5 Pro. PSSR keeps sub-pixel particles stable. FSR on base PS5 softens them into a blur. After exiting the lift, we encounter our first atmospheric figure. Not a boss, just there watching. This is a great test of how each console handles smoke and volumetric effect against a static character. Notice the edge definition around the figure on PS5 Pro versus base PS5. PSSR holds the silhouette, while FSR fuzzes it slightly. Quick traversal section, jumps, dashes. Both consoles handle this without dropping frames. Movement is fluid on both. This is where Saros shows it's a faster, more polished game than Returnal. The animation work has come a long way. Shoot the gate to open it. Brief in-engine cutaway introduces the first enemies. This particular cutaway stays at 60 FPS. Housemarque only locks longer story cinematics to 30 FPS. Quick environment movement like this run at full frame on both consoles. And then we have first real combat. Multiple enemies on screen, particle effects, projectiles. This is exactly the workload Saros is built around. Both consoles hold 60 FPS cleanly here. No drops, no stutter. Even though the base PS5 has the harder job. Lower internal resolution, weaker upscaler. Housemarque's optimization keeps it stable through normal combat density. Now up the stairs, the first boss arrives, and we're supposed to lose this fight. It's a scripted introduction to the bullet hell mechanics that Housemarque is known for. 30 seconds in, neither console drops frames during the encounter. The boss is more bullet pattern than spectacle, which keeps the GPU load manageable on both. Next, I want to show you loading speed test. PS5 Pro reached active gameplay first, but here's a counterintuitive detail. The PS5 Pro doesn't actually have a faster SSD. Both consoles use the same Sony's custom NVMe storage at the same speed. What PS5 Pro has is roughly 28% more memory bandwidth and a slightly faster CPU clock. So when you see Pro loading faster, it's not the storage, it's the system getting that first frame ready sooner. Now back at the hub, talking to Jerome on the left, Sheridan on the right. Zoom in on the base PS5 side and the softness is unmistakable. Beer texture, fabric weave, eye detail are all softer. PS5 Pro's PSSR holds this content at near native 4K. FSR on base PS5 simply doesn't have the input resolution or the reconstruction quality to keep up. This is exactly what Housemarque means when they say cinematic get peak resolution and post-processing on PS5 Pro. Now let's look at the particle pond in the background. Zoomed in, the difference is dramatic. On PS5 Pro, individual fire particles are defined. You can see the granular texture of the effect. On base PS5, FSR ghosts the particle into a soft blob. This is the FSR particle problem in one frame. Saros' signature visual feature handled differently by each upscaler. Now I am outside, doing a 360 around the character. The base PS5 image is visibly softer on the character model itself. Armor detail, shoulder pad geometry, hair strand definition, PSSR on PS5 Pro reconstructs all of that with significant more clarity. This isn't a contrast or grading difference, it's pure resolution and reconstruction. But zoom in on the PS5 Pro side and you'll catch something. There's a faint coasting trail on the character's edges during the rotation. PSSR2 is the upgraded version Sony rolled out in March, and even Sony says coasting is reduced, not eliminated. Extreme camera motion is still the worst case for any temporal upscaler. PS5 Pro is still cleaner overall, but it's not perfect. Running through the environment, fighting smaller enemies, both consoles hold 60 FPS through this. The 5% low on base PS5 across the full recording is 53 frames per second, meaning 95% of the time the console stays above that line. PS5 Pro's 5% low is 57. The PS5 Pro advantage isn't in the average frame rate, it's in the worst moments. About 4 frames of the cushion when the engine is under maximum stress. The graphs you're watching shows measured frame rate data across extensive testing. Base PS5 averaged 59 frames per second, PS5 Pro averaged 59.5 frames per second, almost identical. The gap shows up in the lower percentiles. 1% low on base PS5 is 43.6 FPS. On PS5 Pro, it's 47.7 FPS. About a 4 frames cushion in the heaviest moments. Without VRR, that gap is felt. With VRR enabled on either console, both feel smooth. Here's the full distribution of where gameplay time actually goes. Logged 60 FPS gameplay. 55% on base PS5, 58% on PS5 Pro, story cinematics at 30 FPS, 16.7% on base PS5, 16.6% on PS5 Pro, almost identical because that 30 FPS lock is platform agnostic by design. Pre-rendered video at 24 FPS, 2% on both. Loading and transitions, 17.5% on both. The actual performance gap exists entirely in the gameplay range. Honest verdict. Going into this test, I expected a wider gap. The data showed something different. Base PS5 holds a 60 frames per second 88% of the time. PS5 Pro holds at 93.4%. PS5 Pro's 1% lows sits 4 frames higher in the worst moments. That's a real gap, but a smaller gap than most cross-platform comparison we have seen in 2026. Where PS5 Pro generally pulls ahead is image quality. Sharper reconstruction at 1440p versus 1224p. Cleaner particle handling thanks to PSSR. And the post-processing intensity Housemarque adds on PS5 Pro makes the world look meaningfully more vibrant. If you own a PS5 Pro, this is one of the best showcase games of the new PSSR. If you're on a base PS5, you're not missing the game, you're getting a slightly softer version of it that still hits the target. Housemarque has shipped a single mode game that respects both pieces of hardware. And as a Returnal fan who bounced up the original, Saros is the more approachable and more polished experience I wish Returnal had been. So that's the test. Both consoles hits the target FPS. Next, I have so many more videos coming in May, including 007 comparison video launching at the end of May. Subscribe so you don't miss either. Thank you for watching. Catch you then.